that are getting into companies, giant multinational companies that use kind of outdated chemical-based models of agriculture. And therefore, pastors and churches sometimes are a little shy to criticize the industrial 20th century model of factory farming, because so many folks in their congregation are employed or connected to those industries in some way, and they don't want to step on people's feet. And the same goes for something like the military industrial complex. How many pastors and churches don't want to criticize our occupation of countries all over the world because their parishioners work for companies or work on bases that have to have that perpetual occupation of other countries to kind of maintain what they're doing? Right? They don't want to rock the boat. Or maybe they work for a company that makes munitions or products that really have a nice profit margin because of how much we spend in our capital into foreign intervention. And then you've got the other thing of prison industrial complex, that how many folks in churches aren't talking about what Jesus would really do in dealing with violent crimes and dealing with nonviolent crimes. Don't even want to have that conversation. Why? Because again, folks in their church work for institutions that have a vested interest in maintaining the massive rate of incarceration that's not working. It does work, though, for the bureaucrats that benefit from it directly. And if you have Brother Jimmy as a prison guard, you don't want to make a sermon where you say, hey, does Jesus really want us sending our neighbors to nonviolent crimes all the time? Does he want us locking up people for every victimless choice? It's kind of hard to do that when Brother Jimmy is a deacon and he works in the local prison. It doesn't mean that it's bad to work for. There's a way that I guess you could do that in a way if that's something you want to do. But the point is, there are so many tentacles of statism and the perpetual occupation of countries all over the globe that we're not able to have a serious conversation about it in circles like in the church, in conservative circles, and traditionalist circles. But we will have that conversation because institutions like what we do on this radio program, media institutions, are going to create that conversation, even if it has to happen outside of the church. If we build this conversation, it can reverberate and affect those who are in the church and are hungry for the real, authentic presentation of the personhood revolution of Jesus. I'm David Gornoski. We'll be back with news headlines in just a moment. Stay with us. David Gornoski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals, join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life
changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania Catania personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
A Neighbor's Choice returns. David Gronowski here, your host. And I want to kind of turn to a topic about agriculture. I had a great conversation with Joel Salatin today, and we're going to have him on the show very soon here. And he is quite a leader around the world, even, and including, very much so in different spaces about regenerative agriculture. And exploring the idea of taking care of animals the way they should be treated, taking care of the land the way it should be treated, taking care of the whole picture of the ecosystem, and pioneering ways in which we can feed the world with the highest quality agricultural ancestral foods. And so we're going to have a great discussion with him. I have to give a shout out to one of our longtime listeners and supporters of the show, Jefferson, for really encouraging me to, and many others too, but he was one of the earliest telling me, you've got to talk to Joel Salatin, the farmer. And we had a great conversation, and we'll be doing some stuff together here very soon on the show. But I want to read this blog I just saw from him on his website, thelunaticfarmer.com. It says, the right size. What's the right size for a food and beverage company? As anyone watching the news knows by now, Sunday, a ransomware attack on the world's largest meat and poultry processor, JBS, closed 6 processing plants in the U.S. Cybersecurity company Recorded Future analyst Alan Liska says since May 2020, at least 40 food and beverage companies around the world have suffered ransomware attacks. How small do you think these outfits were? East Coast fuel supplies were disrupted recently over the ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline. In that instance, a $4.4 million ransom freed up the flow of fuel. As companies pay ransom and sophisticated geniuses play havoc with centralized mega companies, isn't it time to consider decentralized and less technology-dependent suppliers? He says, here at Polyface, which is his farm, we're not even a blip on hacker radar. We're smaller than a gnat. Being insignificant is becoming more and more secure in these days of cyber attacks and the dark web. Several years ago, when all the big companies prepared for terrorist taints in the food supply, we looked out at our mobile field shelters and miniature processing capacity and knew we didn't need to do anything. Our farm would never show up on a malevolent hit list. Centralized industrial scale places. Just one JBS plant employs 3,000 workers. Offer havens for infiltrations, whether physical or virtual. They're big targets and dependent on highly complex, sophisticated systems. The more nodes in an organization, the easier it is for hackers to penetrate. While the right size question doesn't have an easy answer, one thing is for certain. A centralized, techno-sophisticated mega complex is more vulnerable to COVID, ransomware, and other shocks to the system than nimble, people-centric, decentralized outfits where the eyes and hands ratio to output is higher. Provenance matters. Humanity is now in a place where we need to go beyond thinking about what the food on our plate did or does to the frogs, the pollinators, and the earthworms. We have to think about what it offers as a target to cyber criminals. Resiliency is not just about ecology, it's about access. Food and farm authenticity is a big deal, of course, but we need to also consider how big a target the brand has on its back. Every food dollar we can circulate in our community or transfer from big to smaller is a food dollar that invests in a more secure system. The notion that big is secure and small is not is completely false. Being invisible is wonderful. The more invisible food brands we have, the better. Rather than streamlining centralization through globalization, we need to create a jumbled crowd of diversity. That way businesses simply get lost in the confusion, which is also the number one defense used by zebras to deter lions. Efficiency only works when everything goes well. As soon as you have a breakdown like ransomware or COVID, you want effectiveness, not efficiency. The industrial food and farming complex is arguably efficient, but it's not effective. Just like gunpowder gave peasants control over castles, computers give disenfranchised malcontents control over modern food castles. It's time to realize the fragility of today's castle, to go back to a saner size, a peasant-controlled food system, more humble, more rural, more people-oriented, more heritage-based. Let's leave the industrial complex in droves and rebuild the butcher, baker, and candlestick maker at village scale. If you have made an intentional decision to buy something from a smaller outfit recently, what was it? So this is something that I think is a great thing to think about. You know, we don't think about how these giant scale systems are so vulnerable to being taken down by something like COVID or policies around that, or even food outbreak problems, you know, where it contaminates whole factories all over, you know, food supply gets distributed all over the country. And I do think that just like we need to decentralize governance, we need to decentralize decision making, we need to also decentralize our food. Go back to the local farm. Support your local farmers. And really do it, not just do it in a novel way, but really try to see how much of your food investment you can make every month can be from really high quality local agriculture. And it's not going to be a fix-all for everything, right? But the point is, that's where we need to build the economy into a decentralized cultures, decentralized art, decentralized filmmaking. We don't need Hollywood to make one-size-fits-all entertainment. We don't need New York City to make one-size-fits-all news and you know, financial decisions for us. We don't need DC to make one-size-fits-all policing and one-size-fits-all nanny state regulations. All these things can be solved if we look closer to home and start realizing that we cannot maintain our sanity, we cannot maintain our prosperity, we cannot maintain our liberty if we maintain such a fragile top-down model. We have to go closer to home. And that's something that is a big priority of us. That's why we promote local farmers. That's why we promote ancestral eating. And that's why we are going to continually challenge the fake news and its promoting of vegetable oils, its promoting of all these toxic inflammatory foods that are driving all the chronic illnesses. It's so much excitement in the air when we realize how much can change for the better in this time. People really are waiting. They're really open in this moment to really make dramatic changes for the better. And that includes in our educational choices. It includes in our entertainment choices, our entertainment dollars. And that includes our food choices and where we put our dollars at. And it's time to go closer to home. It's time to go local. as best as we can for as much as the foods that we need, and really stick to it, because that's how we're going to find a return to a better culture. Because if we start looking closer to home, we're not going to have so many fights over who's running DC. What a waste of time. We'll take a quick break and return after this ABC News break.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on.
Yeah.
The madness of 2020.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Plant.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
This has just got me going on.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States.
Telling it like it is.
You should be thanked profusely for getting to the point. You're a voice of reason in the sea of idiots.
The Chris Plant Show. Weekdays 11 to 2. News Talk 1040 WHBO.
Another ransomware attack, this time in Florida, shutting down the computer system at UF Health in the Villages Hospital. That hospital reportedly now forced to operate on pen and paper until there's a fix. The Biden administration changing the way it deals with the increase in cyber attacks. ABC's Mary Bruce has more.
The Justice Department also issuing new guidance for federal law enforcement. One senior official reportedly saying investigations into cyber attacks will be elevated to a priority level similar to terrorism cases.
A CDC report shows 1/3 of teens hospitalized due to COVID-19 end up in the ICU. Most of those patients had underlying conditions. The CDC says it also underscores the importance for kids ages 12 to 17 to get vaccinated. Former President Trump's accounts on Facebook and Instagram suspended for 2 years. The company says its decision follows, quote, its praise for people engaged in violence at the Capitol on January 6. In a statement, the former president claimed the company was, quote, censoring him.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I want to look at some of the comments here. Brad Smith says, yes, it's sad when you have a pastor that wants you to pray for W. Bush during the Iraq War, saying he was brought to us by God to keep us safe. That was the only time I've ever got up and walked out. I was so mad. And, you know, that kind of, unfortunately, that kind of marriage of the church with militarism has, you know, it continued with, you know, the era of Trump to some degree, although Trump was certainly not as expansionary of starting new wars as Bush or Obama. He certainly had no problem writing a giant expense and not stop, you know, $700 billion handout to the military industrial complex, and, you know, not doing enough to wind down the wars he said he was going to wind down. Those things happened under his watch, and that gets people who are, you know, part of persona worship upset when you mention that. They want to say, "Oh, well, you're a liberal if you criticize my hero." Well, if you think you're a conservative, if that's all you do is look at being, you know, sticking to personas, then, you know, you're not really conservative, or whatever it is that you describe yourself to be. But that is a problem with the. And when you're always going along with perpetual war and militarism spending, what you're supporting is what? Social engineering practices, critical race theory, critical theory being taught in Afghanistan schools. Like, why are we spending money doing that? Okay, that's not our job. That means you worship government, really. You may not know it, but your actions speak louder than your words. You can go to church on Sunday and say, oh, I worship God, but then you go out the rest of the week and you go on for, hey, let's go take out Iran. That's what we should do. And install, social justice critical theory in all their classrooms and teach them how they should handle all their cultural values with cultural nihilism as our guiding principle for them. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. This is worship of the state. That somehow the state in D.C., the people, it's so funny too, because these folks on the right have had this valorization of militarization, and look at what happened. The Pentagon has nothing but contempt in terms of their policies for the values that conservatives believe in. They're embracing social justice narratives in their advertisement and their recruitment and their policies and their personnel. They're looking for anybody who has extremist views, which means don't agree with corporatism, don't agree with, the critical theory, avant-garde flavor of the month. This is, you reap what you sow. For so long, conservative churches wrote a blank check to militarism and foreign adventurism. And what did it get him? But nothing. But an organization that has absolute contempt for the Christian values that churches say they have. So it's funny how that all works out. When you worship the state, you end up getting what exactly you were going to get all along, which is an absolute contempt for the values that you say you support. So it's just a lesson that I wonder how many will learn from this, that we have to abandon this idolatry of human beings to map out the world for us and to map out our food for us, to map out our medicine for us. Ron says, God bless Trump's Operation Warp Speed. May Fauci be arrested for the Fauci flu. Lockdowns are illegal. Vaccine was a success. The Fauci flu is being controlled. Lockdowns are illegal. So but that represents something that I don't agree with, that framework, right? Where, and I don't have an opinion one way or another really about warp speed, but we don't know for sure whether this is a good policy that the Trump administration helped roll out, and Biden is now really ramping up of saying, hey, we've got to get legal immunity products, these drugs from Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson. They have no skin in the game legally, and we got to push this on to children. That I have a problem with that, okay? If you have decades and decades of life accumulating government-subsidized vegetable oils that were subsidized under Bush and Obama and Clinton and Trump and now Biden, if you've been eating those things for decades, you can make that choice. But I don't think we should be going along with peer pressure to try to push young kids into getting an experimental product with no skin in the game. That is absolutely unethical on so many levels. It's a joke. Aaron comments, these cyber attacks might be a blessing in disguise. Anything that undermines the legitimacy of the state is a good thing. Tina says, in Christ there is no east or west, in him no south or north, but one great fellowship of love throughout the whole wide earth. And there is, see, that's where we have to recover the real Christian culture of love and nonviolence and the universality of personhood, rather than fall into idolatry of the nation. Now, what I mean by that is I was talking to somebody about this before, and he was saying that nationalism, in some sense, is like proto-globalism. And I thought that's a good way to look at it. And I agree with that, which is that, those who say the solution to the globalists in TV party media and groupthink media is to double down on nationalize everything. That's a loser's reactionary approach, because America was not founded to be nationalist government. It was designed to be a federal system in which most of the powers were held to the people in the local governments. That's not nationalism, okay? And you get this turn towards nationalism, that starts to rage, and it was happening, at the founding moment. The Constitution being developed, well, it is certainly a step in the direction of nationalism and away from the spirit of what the founders had originally set forth of decentralized, federalized, or limited central government and more power to the local places. And so nationalism is not the end all be all by any means. And the fact that conservatives feel that they have to plant their flag on nationalism as the solution to globalism, I think is again a strategic and cultural mistake. There is a place, if we're talking about, so there's a pragmatic way to look at nationalism. If we're talking about, do you want DC to run all of your health decisions, or do you want some group like the WHO from far, far away to make your decision? Obviously, if you had to pick between two bad options, you'll choose something that's a little bit closer. But why do we want to stay in that loser's frame of just reacting to two rotten solutions? Why don't we say, I don't accept DC micromanaging my health, and I don't accept WHO. I'll go local. And then what's better than just local, of course, is personhood, where you say, well, I'm not going to have a local government force me to do something with my health either. I'm going to let the human person and their family deal with these things and let them work out their freedom as they see fit. See how that's the goal we need to fight for. And any movement that wants to throw away that as the goal for a lot of the things that bother us, I think they're going to be just another reactionary losing game. Because nationalism is only good insofar as it is not globalism. But as an end solution, it doesn't get you anything. It gets you exactly where we're basically at for most things, in some sense, in DC already, where DC runs everything. They tell you what you're allowed to do. The CDC says you can take your mask off. What is this? That's nationalism. That's not good. That's a national edict, a centralized state telling you what the heck you can do, and they don't know what they don't know what they're supposed to do. They're just acting like they have authority, and they don't. They have way too many conflicts of interest to know how to give you good, honest, and complete information. But frankly, I don't want it to be just, I just want the state of Florida to tell me what to do. I don't want to hear what Florida has to tell me either. I live in Florida, right? I don't want to hear what Florida says you can now wear a mask. I don't care what Florida has to say. They're not, right? They don't have control over my, body, my spirit. And that's why we can't leave it at just these kind of, it's all about the nationalism, or, it's all about states. No, these things ultimately come back to respecting what God has given us, which is free will. God does not create a situation which we are asked to be coercive. He respects free agency. He respects our choice and how he engages with his creation, in my opinion, right? And so if that's the case, how much more so should we always put free agency as the way in which we deal with so many of these problems? At the same time that I say that, just to be fair, we shouldn't idolize free agency either. That becomes libertinism, right? That becomes a kind of cartoonish libertinism where it's all about the human individual and there's no framework of anthropology that informs how the individual is related to the community. But one can have respect for personhood and free agency without falling into the cartoonish version of it called libertinism, where it's all about whatever I want. It's me, whatever. That's not what we're talking about here. This is why, talk radio doesn't, hasn't had these kind of nuanced conversations in some time, but we need to. We need to be able to sort out, okay, are we just going to say nationalism? Okay, what does that actually mean? Or what about, are we going to say, okay, I'm the states guy. It's all about state governments. No, that doesn't get us everywhere either. It's always trying to get power closest to the skin in the game, rubber meets the road point of contact. That's where people who imitate Jesus direct situations too. Jesus didn't go around and say, I'm going to create an agency that will be micromanaging Good Samaritan policies by force, and it will be established in the capital in Jerusalem. He didn't do that. Okay? And he didn't say, well, actually, I don't want a one-size-fits-all Good Samaritan agency in Jerusalem. I want it to be decentralized by city. No, it was all about the human person making the animated decision to put their skin in the game, to put their life on the line, to do that which is beautiful and good and loving to those and loving their neighbor as themselves, right? And that is where we should find our focus and attention. That's not libertarianism. That's the personhood revolution that Jesus started, right? That's why St. Cyprian said the whole world is wet with bloodshed and murder, but what we call something that's a murder on an individual scale, somehow it becomes okay if it's done on a collective scale. I'm paraphrasing this church father from, I think, 250 AD. I may be wrong on the date there a little bit, but he was an early church father that explained what I'm talking about, which is this idea that we always have to maintain personal agency in the way we create our laws. And that's why I'm against the nanny state laws like the war on drugs and all these things. Not because we're libertine where we want to say, hey, the human person is a god unto themselves. No, but rather, if something's wrong, but it doesn't produce a victim party by the act itself, not secondary effects that could correlate around that act, but actually the act itself, it doesn't produce a victim, an injured party, then how do you have the right to introduce state coercion to stop that action? That's the ethical question at the heart of why everything in our world today is so messed up. And that's why it's so important to get culture right, because culture is where we learn our ethics. That's where we learn through stories that we tell what's right and what's wrong. And all the stories that we hear keep justifying might makes right. The ends justify the means. It always reinforces on the subtlest levels, almost any media you watch, it's always reinforcing some kind of sneaky justification for imposing preemptive violence against one's neighbor for some greater good myth. And that is simply a road to destruction that we are walking down very fast, and we don't need to. We can turn away at any moment and go into a better direction, and all of us, our families, our security, our safety, will all benefit as a result. I'm David Granosky. You can call in at 727-587-1040, 727-587-1040 if you have a desire to call into the show, or drop YouTube comments or Facebook comments on our live stream. Back in a second.
Hello, this is David Granosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's OakleyTransport.com.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now.
NMLS ID 1492187, Equal Housing Lender.
A Neighbor's Choice returns, and I want to give an update. We did an interview with Sean Cahill, who is a veteran in the U.S. Navy, who did a fascinating discussion with Dr. You and I on his eyewitness report of seeing these unidentified aerial phenomena aboard the, I believe it was the Princeton, that is at the heart of the video footage that the government has released. And this report that's due at the end of this month. And we had a great discussion with him. You know, the New York Times is trying to kind of get ahead of the story by getting their, you know, the New York Times is like the closest thing we have to like, you know, like a CCP, you know, like CCP in China has its official state media. And, you know, Russia has their state media, and the classic Soviet Union was Pravda. New York Times, there's nothing more closer to Pravda than the New York Times today. So when they release something, it's because they've got kind of like, this is the official line that those with power and government want us to know. And so that's why they have this story, U.S. intel report on UFOs that suggests no evidence of aliens. And it's kind of, you know, they don't know what they are. In other words, as if you read the article, they don't know what these things are, but they know that, you know, they know that this story, I guess, is getting a lot of attention. So they have to try to act like they're going to respond to some degree to the pressure that folks like Sean Cahill and Lou Elizondo and others in the media have put on this topic. And, you know, it'll be interesting to see what comes out. I'll let you decide for yourself what you think of the story that Sean Cahill reports on our show. I think we got into some stuff about how the physics of these things could be operating. We got into looking at some of the alternative explanations for these phenomena, what they could be. And I think you'll find it to be a fascinating discussion. National File says Twitter suspends organization for announcing they will release more Fauci emails. So more mutation of discourse by these corporate fascists. And some might say, hey, fascism, that's a little vicious, right? And I understand that line. There's a way in which I think you could use fascist in a way that's trying to say, well, everything is Hitler. That's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to use the word in its proper form. Fascism, I take to mean like what Mussolini and these folks, it's about this big government, big business alliance, this kind of corporatism, privatized profits, socialized losses. And when you have this group like Twitter, which is, they're basically in a situation where, if they don't act like de facto media arms for the powerful in government, they could get regulated or in a way that hurts them. And so they want the regulations to stay the way they are, in a way that allows them to maintain their power. They don't want regulations to come in and give them trouble. And so they act like kind of like a fascist type censorship arm, where they're a private company making private profits, but they don't have any competition, because government kind of has a nice relationship with them in the way the regulatory environment works to protect them. So you see this, and it says the Informed Consent Action Network was suspended by Twitter on Thursday after they announced that they will soon be publishing more emails from Anthony Fauci. ICANN, an organization dedicated to increasing informed consent regarding vaccinations, tweeted on Thursday that following the release of thousands of pages from emails from Anthony Fauci that had been revealed through the Freedom of Information Act requests from the Washington Post and BuzzFeed, that they would be dropping 3,000 new pages of FOIA'd Fauci emails that evening, providing further insight into Fauci's actions on COVID vaccine safety and more. However, conservative commentator Michelle Malkin later announced that ICANN had been suspended by Twitter for announcing they would release more emails from Fauci. In a screenshot posted by Malkin to the Big Tech website, ICANN's Twitter has been locked due to the tweet allegedly violating their policy on spreading misleading and potentially harmful information related to COVID-19. So again, they come in and they do the bidding of giant corporations and giant government agencies, and they don't seem to have any ethical self-examination on display about how corrupt and backwards that kind of approach is. That you're not doing anything that's ethical. You're not doing anything that's scientific in the spirit of science discourse. You're doing something that is politically calculated, that is selfish, and that is harming people's ability to get the facts. And that's just something that we must overcome. We can't allow this kind of behavior to go unpunished in the terms of our choices and our dollars. Just like we got to send our dollars outside of the corporate centralized food system and the corporate centralized media system, we need to send our dollars outside of the corporate centralized media conglomerates, and especially these social media sites that are just brazenly trying to hold back what could be an awesome renaissance of liberty and health and transformations for many people on so many levels. This is a holistic show. We care about food, health. We care about nutrition. We care about the environmental situation we find ourselves in with pollution, but we always point the answers back to the great works of Galileo's amongst us, whether it's a Joel Salatin, who we'll have on soon, or whether it's Dr. Yu. What he's doing in physics is tremendous and amazing, and it's awesome. Or whether it's folks doing stuff with low temperature nuclear energy, whatever it is, we want to get those voices heard so that people can be inspired to support them and others to really make this chaotic time end in a good direction, right? To go into a different direction where we can have a happy news cycle. We don't have to stay in this negative cycle all the time. What, can you believe what they did today with our food? Oh, can you believe what they did today with censoring this? No, we have to build media platforms that are ethical, that don't want to distort science in the interest of giant corporations, who just want to say, hey, we respect freedom of discourse. We respect dissent. We respect debate. And we're not going to hide behind these stupid things like, the other story I was just seeing here. Zero Hedge says Facebook confirms Trump banned from platform until at least January 2023. And of course, they want to make sure that he can't use his platform to help get the Republicans back in the House. So Facebook is a political media publisher. And they're so arrogant in their neo-imperialist approach. They're trying to block other countries from talking about ivermectin for their own governments are not allowed to talk about it. And these companies are so arrogant and neo-imperialistic and they're so heavy-handed, and we have to vote with our dollars to get outside of these internet ghettos and build stuff that can actually respect freedom, respect diversity, respect love, and respect the renaissance that's going to happen if we all work together and build this new future. So we'll take a break. You can drop comments on YouTube stream, search for David Granosky on YouTube, or call in at 727-587-1040. Back in a moment.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park, Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. A senior Trump Organization official has testified before a grand jury in Manhattan.
Jeff McConney has worked for former President Trump more than 3 decades and currently serves as controller. He is the first high-ranking employee of the Trump Organization to testify before the special grand jury that's hearing evidence about the former president, his company, and its employees. Of late, prosecutors in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office have been examining certain perks given to Trump's longtime chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, and whether those perks were properly accounted for on his taxes.
ABC's Aaron Katersky. Facebook imposing a 2-year ban on former President Trump's accounts, citing his role in the January 6th violence.
Former President Trump's suspension from Facebook and Instagram will last until at least January 2023. That's just after the midterm elections, but with plenty of time to spare until the 2024 presidential race. Facebook said in a statement it'll reevaluate in 2 years if the former president, who was impeached for inciting the Capitol attack, still poses a risk.
ABC's Elizabeth Schulze. The former president, in a statement, claimed the company was, quote, censoring him. Employers added 559,000 jobs in May, fewer than expected. President Biden calling it progress, but warning that rebounding from the pandemic will take time.
As we continue this recovery, we're going to hit some bumps along the way. Of course, that'll happen. We can't reboot the world's largest economy like flipping on a nice light switch.
More bumps in the road for the infrastructure bipartisan talks, too.
The Senate's Republican negotiator, Shelley Moore Capito, met again with President Biden, and they'll meet again Monday, with the president making a lot of concessions.
He's obviously come down quite a bit in what he originally proposed, and hopefully they'll have more they can add to their proposal.
Spokesperson Jen Psaki still not ruling out another COVID relief-like reconciliation, which only requires 51 Senate votes. Andy Field, ABC News, Washington.
You're listening to ABC News.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the last 39 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how I've done it. Dial pound 250 from your cell phone and say the words real estate, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you it'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Dial pound 250 and say real estate. Let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's the pound sign 250 when they ask for the keyword, say real estate.
Police in Hong Kong have arrested one of the organizers of the city's annual vigil commemorating the crackdown in Tiananmen Square.
Police confirmed that Chow Hang Tung and a 20-year-old were detained Friday morning on suspicion of appealing to others to join an unauthorized assembly. Chow is vice chairwoman of the Hong Kong Alliance, which organizes an annual vigil for victims of Beijing's deadly crackdown on democracy protesters. Ahead of her arrest, Chow explained why June 4th is such a deeply important event to Hong Kongers.
It's a reflection of who we are as Hong Kong people. We are people who are so insistent on justice.
Britt Clennett, ABC News, Hong Kong.
California Governor Gavin Newsom announcing the first of the $50,000 winners in the state's Vax for the Win program.
We're doing all this to encourage that and to get you to think anew and hopefully act anew and get in, walk into you don't even have to make reservations most of these sites and just get that vaccine. So
next week, the winners will get $1.5 million each. The state spending $116 million trying to convince Californians to get their COVID shot. It's the biggest COVID vaccination lottery in the country. Twitter unveiling a subscription service. For a fee, you can undo those tweets within 30 seconds of posting. For now, Twitter Blue, only available in Canada and Australia. This is ABC News.
It's all about the nose. It's your air filter, the first line of defense against bacteria and viruses. If too many germs get stuck in your nose, guess what? You get sick. That's why it's so important to keep your nose clean, just like washing your hands. Now there's a better way to keep your nose clean and help your body protect itself. It's called Navage Nasal Care. Navage uses powered suction to flush out allergens, mucus, bacteria, and viruses. At Navage.com, CVS, Walgreens, Bed Bath, Target, and Rite Aid. Navage, Navage.
I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Hello, this is David Kronosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Granosky. Welcome back to the program. We're live on radio, podcast, and video stream, as well as anneighborschoice.com, where you can listen live to the audio stream there. Just click the player on the homepage. That's anneighborschoice.com. We just did another discussion that you're going to love. This is another online-only discussion with Professor Michael Lisanti, who is the chair of translational medicine at the Salford University in England. He's an American who is living in England now, and he has been a pioneer for a lot of stuff. He's one of the most cited scholars, according to Google Scholar, dead or alive. Because he's been doing pioneering work, amazing stuff, dealing with aging, dealing with cancer, even dealing with COVID. And he's just published a new paper in Nature that demonstrates his hypothesis about how cancer metastasizes and how to stop it using an antibiotic that is able to shut down, like the kind of, I guess the way he explained it, the torque of the mitochondrial, I think is synthase was the term. I mean, the ATP synthase, I should say, and stop the metastasis from happening using a FDA-approved antibiotic that doesn't seem to do any harm to healthy cells, but targets and stops metastasis of cancer with dealing with the mitochondrial dysfunction that's taking place. This is very interesting for folks who hear my show. We talk all the time about how the rise of these processed vegetable oils and sugar consumption are driving this correlation between all these chronic illnesses that have continued to skyrocket in the West and America. And this gives more evidence for that metabolic approach to cancer being where all the funding needs to go. But guess what? Because we don't listen to this is why it all goes back to the principles I was talking about. If we respect personal liberty, if we respect decentralized power and competing organizations of exploration of science and funding of it, instead of having this top-down monopoly of government, we could already know this, and we could already be implementing metabolic approaches to cancer that are way, way, way more effective than the current standard of care. The current standard of care focuses, as our interview with Dr. Lisanti will show, the current standard of care sometimes helps fuel metastasis of cancer. In some cases, it can be effective, but what most of the standard of care seems to be geared towards is dealing with shrinking the tumor as opposed to stopping the metastasis, right? And so if we focus on just shrinking the tumor but not looking at how it spreads, which is how you die from cancer typically, that if we don't look at how to stop it from spreading, then we're not going to have a proper approach to this problem. But see, it's so bureaucratized, it's so centralized that all the well-meaning folks in cancer nonprofits and science labs and so forth are all pulling towards the gravitational pull to finding new patentable drugs that will deal with shrinking the tumor size or looking at, genetic, paradigms of cancer, rather than understanding the metabolic pathways that are causing these things to be such a problem. And I think that is associated with seed oil consumption, overconsumption of these vegetable oils that governments have subsidized. And then if someone has this problem, we need to be exploring and doing replication of Dr. Lasante's work, showing how maybe something like an antibiotic could be used to stop the cancer from spreading and ultimately killing the person. This is amazing stuff. That's what makes this show beyond just a show, is that we have real world research conversations going on, connecting different people from different fields of knowledge, becoming an information clearinghouse for different, visionary thinkers coming together and using the context of a media conversation to invite exploration of ideas and advancement of science. This is what we should be all focused on. This is where all the good stuff happens. But what happens? Human beings are addicted to drama. And there's a reason why they say negative stuff is what draws trending things on Twitter, right? People want to tear down more than build something up. And that's just, what does that do? You tear all your scapegoats down? Does scapegoating Donald Trump off of Facebook stop people from having cancer? No. Does scapegoating Donald Trump off of Facebook until the midterms are safely in the hands of Democrats, does that help stop political violence like the silly guy Mark Zuckerberg says? No, of course not. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't care. Governments are using Facebook every single day to foment insurrections and vicious, violent, bloody coups all over the globe. The DC elites use Facebook and so forth to foment nasty, vicious insurrection chaos all the time. So they're not banning Trump because of him talking about the election claims. They're banning him because the people who run the Uniparty, the Republican establishment, the Democratic establishment, they don't like Trump's brand. And I'm not saying you have to like it. I'm telling you the facts. They don't like that brand. They don't want it around. And they're using their media publishers like Facebook, like New York Times, to try to, scandalize that brand out of existence. But instead of spending all of that energy trying to go after that scapegoat, they could spend their energy doing what we're doing on this program, which is exploring how to stop cancer metastasis, metastatic cancer from, going out of control using non-toxic, very simple solutions like what Dr. Lasante showed in his new Nature Journal paper, antibiotic. How fascinating. That's where stuff should go. That should be the top story the New York Times investigates. But instead, they want to chase power and privilege and then lecture the whole country about what privilege is all about. They don't know anything about how to lecture us about what privilege is when they're steeped in it. And all they do is foment and embrace toxic privilege. Now look at this New York Times headline to see the difference between how they report on Trump versus their empty suit that they like Biden. The New York Times headline says in the first image, White House proposes $4.4 trillion budget that adds $7 trillion to deficits. That's with Trump. And then the next one is Biden to propose $6 trillion budget to make U.S. more competitive. So you see that these headlines change based on the context of their interests. But they know how to, if there's one thing they know how to do, They know how to manipulate low information people to feel a certain way about things and events and people. And, they know persuasion. They know advertising techniques. And they've employed them and they're still employing them all the time to market and proselytize a certain kind of faith and disposition that they want folks to have. Katherine Eban, who is an investigative journalist, and she's a contributing editor at Vanity Fair. She's got a new story out on Vanity Fair called The Lab Leak Theory Inside the Fight to Uncover COVID-19's Origins, which is getting a lot of buzz. And she made a little thread where she kind of summarizes some of the things that she dealt with in this investigation. I'm going to go through it quickly. She says, breaking, my months-long Vanity Fair investigation on COVID-19 origins is live. Interviews with over 40 people, review of hundreds of pages of documents, of U.S. government documents, including internal memos, meeting minutes, email correspondence. And she found conflicts of interest in part from large U.S. government grants supporting controversial virology research, known as gain of function, hampered U.S. government investigation into COVID-19 origins, and legit questions on lab leak hypothesis at every step. In December 9th, 2020, State Department meeting officials say they were explicitly told by colleagues not to explore the Wuhan Institute of Virology's gain of function research because it would bring unwelcome attention to U.S. government funding of it. She goes on to say, in internal memo, Thomas DiNanno, then acting Assistant Secretary of State Department Arms Control Verification Compliance Bureau, documented his team was, quote, warned not to pursue an investigation into the origin of COVID-19, unquote, because it would, quote, open a can of worms if it continued. 4 former State Department officials told Vanity Fair they were repeatedly advised not to open a Pandora's box. DiNanno said, smelled like a cover-up and I wasn't going to be a part of it. How much U.S. taxpayer went to Wuhan Institute of Virology? Katherine asks. On her CV, a lead researcher, Shi Zhengli, listed U.S. government support of more than $1.2 million over 5 years, $665,000 from the NIH, thanks to Dr. Fauci, $559,000 from the U.S. aid. Former CDC Director Redfield got death threats. Now think about that. This is Vanity Fair. It's a very establishment-friendly outlet. So, when they're reporting on something, it's probably even worse than we realize, because they're always going to kind of be biased in their approach to be kind of very, very trusting and very, very faithful to government. So CDC says that the CDC Director Robert Redfield, got death threats from fellow scientists after telling CNN he believed COVID-19 had a lab origin. Quote, I was threatened and ostracized because I proposed another hypothesis, Redfield told Vanity Fair. So there you go. You got death threats coming because the CDC Director Redfield was suggesting that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was where this COVID-19 came out of, and that implicates Dr. Fauci's group for funding this recklessly, this dentist level security of what they had going on, where this work was happening. And he was lying, saying, oh, there was nothing to do with gain of function. Everything is about gain of function. All these emails and these memos that she's talking about are talking about them worried. State Department officials say they're repeatedly advised not to open Pandora's box. They're talking about how, we're not to pursue an investigation because it would open a can of worms about their connection with funding it. This is what happens when you have a monopoly like government funding science like this. There's no checks and balances. You're supposed to have an election or whatever. That doesn't do anything. We've seen that. Elections are not checks and balances on government. When are we going to wake up to that fact? When are we going to stop playing this fantasy game that's where things are changed? I'm not saying you can't ever have anything happen in an election. I'm saying that is the least concern you should have. And your priority should be way in another place. Because we had Colonel Doug McGregor on the show. He talked about how he couldn't even implement Trump's own foreign policy of wanting to get out of Afghanistan because nobody, including Trump's own picks, like Pompeo, wanted to do anything to enforce his policy. Nobody wanted to do anything about it. So elections don't have any accountability for governments. They're not responsible to the people that they're supposed to be serving. They serve only themselves. That's why they have memos of them in Vanity Fair saying, I was threatened and ostracized because I proposed another hypothesis. That's the CDC's director himself, Redfield, with Trump, his administration. They're talking about they were advised not to open a Pandora's box at the State Department. 4 officials at the State Department, former officials. They were told not to pursue the origin because it would open up a can of worms. Because it would bring unwelcome attention to U.S. government funding of the gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And we were told we are not allowed to talk about this. And Facebook and Twitter did all their little Pravda duties of censoring all these articles because internally, that's the reality of what was happening. They didn't want the government to look bad because they were a part of funding this epic disaster that's cost millions of people's lives and untold horrific effects that we don't even know how to calculate to our economy, to emerging economies' ability to even have living. I mean, millions of people have been probably displaced and killed because of that as well, that we don't even count. And so, excuse me if the same lying nonsense folks, okay, trying to be careful how we use our language. Excuse me if the same lying nonsense folks tell us, you have no choice. You must get your little kids vaccinated with a legally immune experimental product. Excuse me if we tell them to go take a hike, okay? If you're going to be this idiotically, pathetically, disgustingly, stupidly censoring, when we were telling you guys, when we were telling the public that this was a gain-of-function leak, at the very least, from the Wuhan Institute of Virology that Dr. Fauci funded, and these jerks have blood on their hands censoring this stuff. Meanwhile, they're all internally saying, yeah, don't touch it. It'll make us look bad. How dare these people have any freaking authority to tell you what to do, what mask to put on, what you're allowed to do, what concert you're going to go to, what you're supposed to do for your immune system, what you're supposed to eat, plant-based goop. They have no authority whatsoever. And if you don't get that memo, you didn't get nothing. We'll take a break and return in just a moment.
David Granosky here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family.
Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania Catania personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Neighbor's Choice returns. I want to look at this story again, continuing with this Vanity Fair article that, is kind of late to the party, but here it is nonetheless, showing all these internal memos of the government just doing whatever they can to try to obfuscate looking at the lab leak hypothesis. How many people died because of them running interference about science? How many people died and had their lives ruined by faulty garbage policies like lockdowns that had zero scientific basis for working because of these clowns like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube who continue to censor facts and truth from coming to light. They think they know better. They think they run the planet. Catherine Eben says, the author of this Vanity Fair piece about, it's called The Lab Leak Theory Inside the Fight to Uncover COVID-19's Origins. It says, personal note, reporting this story has been like an Escher drawing. Each time I thought I had gotten to top of the staircase, it turned again. Had to peel away conspiracy theories, racist insinuations from legit concerns, of which there are many. Many experts quoted and unquoted gave me valuable input. Grateful to all these different names she has. And she says, lastly, if you're reading this thread and have real information regarding COVID origins, Wuhan Institute of Virology, etc., you can contact her. So on Signal, I guess. But, it's just this stuff comes out. Again, there's this social pressure. So you got a couple factors. You've got government wanting to protect their crony friends and big scientism and so forth. Then you've got this kind of desire to protect the American government's own complicity in funding this sketchy security research in terms of sketchy safety levels research. And then you have this, these cultural forces of media outlets not wanting to rock the boat from the government that they worship and the scientism that they adore And so they don't want to report on facts, and they go along with being quiet and censoring and slandering people who raise real concerns, like lab leak hypothesis. And people died as a result. This has got to stop, folks. We have got to use these moments. We can do two things. We can let these things make us cynical and powerless, or we can use these moments as learning lessons to realize that voting isn't going to solve your problems, relying on government isn't going to solve your problems. We have to build back better, and that includes rejecting the nonsense from these central planner nanny states folks who lie and get it all wrong so many times. It's a joke. It's time to turn the page and have a more honest, sustainable conversation. So we'll take a break and return with more news headlines in just a moment.
Politics these days are just that, politics. Pathetic discussions about things that don't matter, while the pandemic, crime, and economic disparity march on. That's why you need a balanced approach to news, business, and entertainment in the state of Florida. That publication is newstalkflorida.com. Whether it's the White House, the courthouse, or your neighbor's house, News Talk Florida has the sources, articles, video, and audio that will be a must daily check-in from your laptop or mobile device. Take a look at newstalkflorida.com. Today's news and entertainment with a Florida slant.
Facebook is keeping former President Trump off its platforms until at least January 2023 for praising those involved in the January 6th Capitol attack.
Our view continues to be, though, that every platform, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, any other platform that is disseminating information to millions of Americans, has a responsibility to crack down on disinformation, to crack down on false information, whether it's about the election or even about the vaccine.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki weighing in. The House Judiciary Committee today questioned former White House counsel Don McGahn 2 years after Democrats first sought his testimony as part of its investigation into the Trump campaign's ties to Russia. Another U.S. official says an investigation into dozens of reported UFOs found could mostly be explained.
It could potentially involve safety and or national security concerns.
Pentagon spokesman John Kirby says many of the sightings were actually things like weather balloons. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. Let's go back to more headlines in the news. I want to see this story in the AP. AP says FDA approves obesity drug that helped people cut weight 15%. It's a new version of a popular diabetes medicine. Could be sold as a weight loss drug in the U.S. Approved Wegovy, a higher dose version of Novo Nordisk's diabetes drug semaglutide for long-term weight management. The participants taking Wegovy had average weight loss of 15%, about 34 pounds. Participants lost weight steadily for 16 months before plateauing. In a comparison group getting dummy shots, the average weight loss was about 2.5% or just under 6 pounds. So I don't know about the mechanisms of what this, I'm looking more at the story. It says, Bay said Wegovy appears far safer than earlier obesity drugs that have gone down in flames over safety problems. The most common side effects for this are gastrointestinal problems, including nausea, diarrhea, and vomiting. Those usually subsided, but led about 5% of study participants to stop taking it. The drug carries a potential risk for a type of thyroid tumor, so it shouldn't be taken by people with a personal or family history of certain thyroid or endocrine tumors. It also has a risk of depression and pancreas inflammation. So, I mean, it's ridiculous because now that I've heard those side effects, it's just what you always expect. But you see how the AP functions to reinforce the dominant cultural hegemony, right? Sick care. That's the name of the game. Don't tell the people, AP, about seed oils. That's what we have to do on my show, as the new 21st century media. But this 20th century nonsense, this state media, all they do is, hey, you got to take this pill. Keep eating your industrial seed oils. Eat your Twinkies with sunflower oil or whatever they've got in them. Canola oil and spices. Corn oil in your snacks. Soybean oil in your mayonnaise. And all this stuff. Just eat it. Don't worry. Not a problem. Take a pill for it. Might give you nausea, might give you gastrointestinal problems, might give you thyroid cancer, might give you all these things. Take a pill for it. Take a pill for it. That's what the AP reports. Now you say, oh, they're just doing their job. No, they're not. They're not doing their job. They're not investigating the truth. That's what I have to do. These people, I don't even call myself a journalist. They do, but they're not journalists. I'm more of a journalist than they are, and I'm not even trying to be a journalist. Because I have a spirit of curiosity that guides the content that we provide for you. Yeah, somebody says on the comments, JMC says, talk to your doctor. That's what they always say, talk to your doctor. And there's great doctors. But this idea that, okay, talk to your doctor, and what does the doctor do? There's good doctors out there that take care of their patient. But the way it's been rigged by government and their cronies that run government, doctors end up just pushing you to the new drug. So you talk to your doctor. I have a problem, you tell the doctor, with weight issues. The doctor wasn't trained in nutrition. So they're not looking at the papers that I'm looking at with you on my show, like with Professor Bruce Hammock, a star of a professor at UC Davis for decades doing work on linoleic acid and what it does to our bodies with pain and inflammation and severe COVID cases, right? They don't, so you go to the doctor and maybe they'll, have some marketing agent come by and say, hey, we got this new FDA obesity drug. Cuts weight by 15%. Could cause thyroid tumors, depression, pancreas inflammation, but that's okay. It's got the big money behind it because it's got a patent so they can make some money back on it. We're going to market it to you. How about you push this on your product, on your customers? And so the doctor has to go with what is FDA approved. That's the whole model that they've been put into, this garbage corporatist scam, state-rigged, crooked system. So they can't, and some of them do tell you what to do, the right stuff. And typically if they care about, the food factor, they'll just say cut down on your portions. But that doesn't tell you anything. If you're cutting down on your portions and you've got weight problems, but you're still eating portions of mayonnaise with soybean oil and bread buns made with these oils in them, they're driving dysfunction of your mitochondria. They're driving diseases. They're driving depression. They're driving sugar addiction. They're driving the weight gain. They're driving the dysregulation of insulin, which causes diabetes. They're causing all these different things, even if you're being a little more mindful of the portion size. If you're eating a toxic oil that your stupid government wants you to eat and you're eating it at a moderate level, it will still, in some cases, drive these problems because it accumulates. It bioaccumulates in your body. So this nonsense, this whole paradigm is a total, absolute, insane joke. That's why I tell you all the time, don't fall for the lie these crooks like Bernie Sanders tell you, this elitist millionaire crook. Never trust a rich socialist, just like you don't trust a skinny chef, right? You don't trust a rich socialist. And I guess the reason why the chefs are so supposed to be overweight is probably because they eat seed oils as they cook their food and all the seed oils in the restaurants today. But anyways, You don't trust a rich socialist. So you get these millionaires like Bernie Sanders telling you, hey, the problem is this. They'll tell you the problem in some sense. Yeah, it's a rigged system. But their solution will make it even worse. Single-payer healthcare cannot fix what single-payer nutrition science broke. And that's our bodies. That's our immune system. And we have to call them out, these crooks at every level. And it's not just crooks. It's mostly a lot of ignorant people. That's the reality. We want to assign, motive to everybody, but a lot of it's just arrogant, ignorant people. Arrogantly ignorant about what they think they know, and they don't know anything. They're driving, talk to your doctor, take a FDA-approved drug. So you're going to, basically you're creating a drug dealer scenario. You got to go to, instead of learning nutrition science, state, managed medicine pushes them to learn which chemicals to prescribe that billion-dollar company spent billions of dollars going through the FDA approval process to put on the market. Symptom mitigation instead of correcting the holistic problem underlying the health. That is the revolution. That is a revolution that will shake the foundations of this nanny state at every level, because government has its power because they pretend to be the go-to end-all be-all for our health. And once the population realizes that government has been sickening us with their ignorant pseudoscience that they've pushed, that will be the shift, in my opinion, for people to let go of their idolatry of state worship. People have to be moved by skin in the game. Once they realize, my God, I don't need to have these diabetes drugs, or I don't need to have these heart statins, and I don't need to have all these things. I can get off. I'm saying you don't have to even get to that point of needing those things if you stop buying into this nonsense that it doesn't matter what you eat. In fact, it's worse than that's worse. It's actually worse. They're telling you, go eat the worst things for you to eat. These PUFAs, these seed oils, and it's destroying your mitochondria, which are your little batteries in your cells. And that destroys your metabolic health, which causes all these metabolic diseases. And we're just on the tip of the spear here, folks. This is like tomorrow's news today, because this event, I believe in the human ability to get this truth out, right? I believe that this 20th century top-down model is falling apart, continues to be exposed as nonsense. And once people realize, my goodness, all these people I knew and loved that were suffering from all these diseases, autoimmune diseases, acute diseases that were not able to be handled without massive amounts of cytokine storms and so forth, all these problems I didn't need to do if I just stopped sycophantically trusting in what the state tells me is what I'm supposed to do. They tell me that medicine can only be prescription drug based and side effect reducing. They tell me that in the world of nutrition that you're supposed to eat PUFAs, which is the worst thing in the world to be eating. They tell me all these different things. They tell me that there was no way it was a lab leak for the Wuhan. They tell me I got to wear a mask outside. Total nonsense. They tell me I have to be locked in my house. Total nonsense. At what point? They tell me cigarettes were good before they said, oh, sorry, made a mistake. When are we going to realize that human beings are not God, and they're going to tell you a bunch of nonsense, and just because they have some kind of air of superiority with their little alphabet soup labels in their agency doesn't mean that they're somehow figuring it out. They're just a bunch of fools who have no skin in the game, so they don't have any corrective measures for stop being a fool. So many folks who run these government agencies could tell you the truth if they had a little competitive pressure, who would keep their feet to the fire to say, hey, you know what? Stop telling them that nonsense. PUFA is toxic. If there was competition for the American Heart Association, then they would have to stop telling you the nonsense, because a competitor could really show that they're a bunch of nonsense liars in this stuff they're spewing. And it is, people say, oh, they're misguided. Okay, but they are misguided, but at the same time, it is kind of like a lie, because if your job is to get all this money, like the American Heart Association, and tell people your fancy little labels, what's good for your heart, and you can't do the literature research, That's ridiculous. Isn't it ridiculous? Isn't it ridiculous that we're supposed to say, oh no, they're just totally misguided? Well, but at some point, it's worse than just misguided, right? When you're deceiving people, and I guess that's my thing. You know, there may be folks who really genuinely believe that these PUFA seed oils are good for the heart, and they're in there. But when they say that they're the standard for heart health, that's the big lie that I have a problem with, right? It's like you have no basis to say that. You may be wrong on your scientific evidence. You haven't done enough research that someone like me has done and figured it out. Many other people have done. You haven't figured that out. That's one thing. But then when you try to act like you are the authority, the monopoly on what is a healthy heart, and then you get it so freaking wrong, it's a joke, then that means you're a liar. Because you could have, you know, with that budget that the American Heart Association has, you can't think you think about it. If I was the American Heart Association, couldn't you have at least like one guy who's like, hey, go entertain the research that we heard on A Neighbor's Choice with all the folks who've been looking at the research, all the papers, all the scientists that David Granovsky has on the show. That's strange. Let's go. I mean, they don't have to find it from my show. I'm just making an example. These people are out there besides just my show. Scientists. The best, not just small, little, obscure, but really top-notch scientists. You would think that they could have one guy who they're going to say, okay, we're going to entertain this alternative thing and put it out as, hey, look, we're still going to push our vegetable oil sludge to you as your healthy heart stuff, but we're working on this alternative thing. Oh, no, you can't do that, can you? You got to have your little arrogant, this is human nature. You've got to see this. This is what human nature does. It's not about Democrats, Republicans. This is what human beings do. When you give them power, they do stupid stuff like this. We are the official heart association. We can't hire one guy to do the research that I've done. It's pathetic, man. This is so embarrassing. It's such a disgrace. It's such an insult to intelligent people. That you look at this, how pathetic and flimsy the whole facade is. Then you get into the American Cancer Society. They got one guy that can promote what Lasante's doing. Why am I doing more to end cancer than an American Cancer Society or whatever the hell their group is called? That's pathetic. That's embarrassing to me. That is so insulting to me. It makes me want to puke. You can't have one guy promote Lasante's work. Professor Michael Lasante, one of the most cited scholars, dead or alive on Google Scholars. I'm saying those things because I know how mimetic government bureaucratic people are. They want to fit in with what's cool. So I put out the trope about what's fashionable for mimetic people. Look, he's got thousands of citations by all these academics. Folks, isn't that good enough? Can you please do something to promote Dr. Lasante's work about antibiotics stopping metastasis of cancer? Can you do that, American Cancer Society? Can you do that? Why can't you? Don't you have curiosity? Don't you have one guy who can be the contrarian? Stack your staff 99% to, the official Luddite 20th century failed pseudoscience model for how to deal with this problem. But can you have one guy representing Lasante's work or anything else? Dr. Seyfried's work we've had on the show. This is so embarrassing. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. You can't see so many of these nationalist types and conservatives. Oh yeah, we just need to get our guy in there and we'll fix the FDA with our guy. It's like, give me a break. You don't even understand how deep the problem goes. Those folks, they have no, folks who just believe you just got to get a new president in, they don't understand that the American Heart Association's got it totally wrong. They don't understand that the cancer standard of care is totally wrong. They don't understand any of this stuff. They don't understand that the USDA's got it totally wrong on what to recommend for your food and your health. They don't understand. They're just like, oh, Trump gave corn and soy subsidies. He's a good guy for America. No, he's not. You don't want to be having subsidized farming practices. That's going to distort the dietary intake that we shouldn't be having those kind of intake, It's just absolutely, it's exhausting to deal with this because it's like this could be so much easier if human beings had the capacity at these establishment organizations to have some kind of like self-awareness. Is there any self-awareness there? Why can't they speak? Are they all like the internal memos that Vanity Fair released about the Wuhan thing? Where I don't want to look bad, so I don't want to speak out. I'm working at the American Heart Association, and I don't want to tell anybody that we were going to look bad if we admit that we were frickin' wrong about what to eat for fats for decades. Well, why don't you have a little bit of humility? And they would have it quicker if we had a competitive free market approach to funding this research. See, that's the thing. The system we have today is geared towards rewarding wicked idiocy. I'm David Gornosky, back in a moment.
Hello, this is David Gornosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Welcome back to the program. A Neighbor's Choice continues now live. And I want to remind you to go to our website, aneighborschoice.com, and subscribe to our email, where we'll send you out our content in a nice little compact highlight email, sharing with you what we've got. Articles, online only podcasts, video roundtables with the best scientists, informing you about things you can do in your life to have a vibrant life. It's not just about obesity and diabetes and cancer and COVID, which we deal with on these shows, but it's also about mental health and these other things that people just live with, thinking they can't stop it. And you can. You don't have to live in this mental bondage and physical bondage that the TV promotes. It's so embarrassing. Jack says contrarians will be ridiculed, referring to the way that monopoly government agencies can't seem to handle, and their little buddies, the American Heart Association and stuff, can't handle even giving a voice to a contrarian. Like if I wanted to be a nanny state person, you would think that in order to like maintain your position of monopoly authority, you would want to like have a representation of the other side, just so that you can have, hey, well, look, we hear from the folks that are demonizing PUFA as the main driver for heart problems and inflammation. They don't want to. I guess they're not wise enough. I don't know. Alma says, I took steroids for years for asthma, and all the junk I was eating made it worse. So you did what the doctor and the TV tells you. You had a problem. You went to the doctor. He didn't have any nutrition science in his background, so he did what he was told to do, which is there's a prescription that the FDA has approved. Here it is. So your side effects seems to be reduced, but has the chronic problem that's causing it actually stopped. But she says, I started eating healthy and went from 220 pounds to 135 and no longer need steroids. Some doctors just write prescriptions. And that is most doctors, because again, the system is designed so that that's the standard procedure. And that doesn't mean there's well-meaning people there. Aaron says, in response to Alma's comment, my doctor had me take muscle relaxers for my shoulder, and I had the worst reaction of my life. Sometimes it's just better to play through the pain. But as we've seen in the interview with Professor Bruce Hammock on our website at neighborschoice.com, he talks about how so much of this pain problem is exacerbated by bioaccumulation of omega-6 seed oil. Leukotoxin, these things, the arachidonic cascade seems to be what aspirin is stopping, and the arachidonic acid is caused by the seed oil consumption. So you reduce the seed oil consumption, and the things are not, you don't have to live with the pain. You can actually reduce the pain naturally by getting off of government subsidized American Heart Association recommended PUFA fats. So it's just frustrating to see this, but there's some signs of hope here. The Gallup poll says Americans' preferred advice for lifestyle during the pandemic. Finally, Phil Kerpen says, finally a majority, 56%, are for normal life. Support for normal life by party, 87% of Republicans, 64% of independents, and 29% of Democrats. So in terms of, I guess, wanting to go back to normal life, it's sad the Democrats have just created such a toxic environment of very hellish corporatist groupthink. I hope they can have a renaissance, but I don't know. It's just sad to see. Someone, Jay says, any time for some fringe Pentagon UFO report. Well, they haven't, the New York Times has talked about, they've tried to get ahead of and frame it, right? But they haven't released the full report from what I understand. That will happen later in the this month of June. But my interview with Sean Cahill will be up. And he is one of the critical eyewitnesses who's been really out there front and center with Lou Elizondo, the former director of ATIP, who we're going to be interviewing, by the way, very soon, who are very much at the very heart of this story. So A Neighbor's Choice, we're interviewing basically the two best guys at the heart of actually getting this content out to the public. At least those working on the outside right now of government. But, they worked inside the government as well. And so I think that the way the New York Times, he says, the commenter says, pushing its Russia or China line nonsense. Yeah, I mean, that's what they always do. That's always how they frame everything. It's funny isn't it funny how humans, like, when they talk about things in the abstract, they say, if aliens ever came and visited us, they'd say how barbaric and brutish of a species we are to be so obsessed with our warlike primitive ways, right? And folks that read the New York Times would be the first to say that, right, in a hypothetical sense. You know, if aliens ever visited our planet, they'd say, how, my goodness, how backwards and primitive and barbaric this little species is. But then look what they do and turn around and do. When they talk, as the commenter says, when they talk about these unidentified aerial phenomena, the immediate knee-jerk reaction of this hoity-toity, oh, we're so sophisticated New York Times is, it's probably our rivals, Russia and China. It's like, oh, whoa, I thought you were like sophisticated just a half a second ago saying, if aliens ever visit our planet, they'd be so ashamed of how pathetic and barbaric we are. Well, look what you do. Everything you interpret is, hey, let's go fight our team, our rival team. Let's go stir up trouble in hell against somebody that can blow us apart. How stupid and unself-aware can the New York Times and these folks be? It's embarrassing, right? But that's why those sites are going to the ash heap of history. Nobody cares. The New York Times is going the way of the telegram, okay, the telegraph. We've got to build something better. And that's what we're doing, you and I, right now on this radio show. I'm David Granosky. Godspeed.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 W.